to consider the agenda items. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to welcome everyone, and I want to remind those wishing to address the board this evening to sign up with the clerk, Cindy, on my right. There is a 5-minute limit to the comments. Upon approval of the consent agenda, no additional speakers will be accepted. Because we have a lot of speakers tonight, we're going to call 5 names at a time. And I think we were going to try to make a spot for them over here behind the podium so we can make sure that everybody gets in here and is able to speak, and we can keep things moving along. I am going to try to be pretty strict about the 5-minute limit tonight, so don't be shocked or offended if I gavel you right at the end of your 5 minutes, because we're going to stick to that this evening. I also just wanted to say that if you haven't spoken at a board meeting before, it feels awkward because it's really a listening session and not interactive, so you're talking to the board, and sometimes people will have questions that they want to get answered and no one says anything. So know that it's a listening session, but it's not interactive. And I think that's it. With that, we'll move on to see if there are any changes to tonight's agenda. Dr. Guest.
Yes, there are some changes tonight, Madam President. There are 3. The first is to please withdraw item E10, which is a consent agenda item. This is a recommendation about entering into a contract for GPS systems for our district buses. This will be resubmitted at a future meeting. The second correction is F2. The second sentence in the recommendation reads, teachers to receive the required increase in pay, and then it should say, including their career increments, and progress 1 year on the salary schedule. And then the third is information item G1, recommending the renaming of the former Robert E. Lee Elementary School. It requires a correction to an error. The date should be August 20th, 2018 instead of August 6, 2018.
Thank you, Dr. Guest. With those changes, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Call for the vote. Ms. Shelton?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Please help yourself to water or coffee that's up here, and if we run out of seats, we have some overflow seating if needed. And remember that you can follow along out there in internet world on Facebook Live or anything else like that. So if you're texting, or can let people know, that's where they can see what's going on. I know Ms. Shelton has some special recognitions this evening.
I do, thank you. My 4-week-old Caleb is in the back joining us with my mom from Michigan, visiting to see the grandbabies. I may have to step out for a minute, so if you're speaking at that moment, please don't be offended.
Dr. Gist, any special presentations or awards this evening?
We do not have any special presentations this evening, Madam President.
With that, that'll bring us to item D on the agenda, to approve the minutes of July 2nd. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
I'll call for the vote. Ms. Fate?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. From there, we'll move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any questions regarding any items on the consent agenda? Call for the vote. Ms. Shelton?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. That moves us to our action agenda, and we'll go into item F1 and make a couple comments about tonight regarding the public comment, just kind of a reminder of a few things. So as we head into this, we kind of want to just remember that we're all here because we love our city, and more importantly, because we believe in its future, which is determined by the success of our schools and our students. And besides being here to take part in supporting the future in whatever our opinions are, we're also individuals, moms, dads, grandpas, aunts, babies, daughters, sons. So we all have our own story and our own facts and our own individual perspectives, and that's just important to remember and not let, not to be dehumanized, like there's a narrative or that you're, some kind of abstract person that doesn't have positive intent. So I'm just kind of reminding us of those things, so when we're speaking and when we're hearing things, that we can remember that about each other, that we're just kind of real human beings trying to work through this. We're doing our very best. And as we do that, I think about all the communities throughout the entire country, especially in the past year, who have and continue to address public spaces that have a Confederacy honored, the Confederacy or a Confederate general honored in some way. And they too have had many meetings, many task force committees, forums, restarts, extensions, delays, and then change. So this is actually what wrestling looks like. We say things all the time like, this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation, or this is messy, or we have to wrestle with this. This is what we're doing, and we're doing it together, and it's imperfect, but we are doing it together as people who care about our city, our schools, and our kids. So just remember that. This wrestling is just, it's acceptable to do that. It's what we must do. It's not optional. It's how we grow, evolve, and start to build bridges, because that's what we want to do. We start the work of here and go forward, and whether we change symbols or not is really just part of what we're doing. There's much more work to be done. So I just want to remind everyone to remember why we're here and what we're doing. And with that, I'll read the agenda item, and then we can go into, we have several speakers on that item. So on F1, motion, discussion, and vote on motion to postpone the effective date of renaming the school known during the 2017-2018 school year as Robert E. Lee Elementary School until the conclusion of the regularly scheduled board meeting of August 20th, 2018. The rationale: on June 18th, 2018, the board voted to extend the date on which it would rename the school known in the 2017-2018 school year as Robert E. Lee Elementary, to allow the recommended name to be presented to the board as an information item on August 6, 2018, and for a vote at the next regularly scheduled board meeting of August 20th. The board should extend the date for renaming the school from August 6th to August 20th. So with that, I'll start calling on our speakers. First, Valerie Fisher, and if Sarah Doherty, Paul Doherty, Shane Matson, and Andrew Crabtree will get prepared. That's the order in which we'll do that.
Nothing like going first, right? Thank you for listening to my story. You should know a handful of things about myself and my family. I am a mother of 8. I'm a former foster mother. I am an adoptive mother. All 8 are adopted in my family, and we are very proud of this. If anyone knows, I know how to advocate for kids and to stand up for what's right, even when it's not the popular choice. Gosh, I shouldn't be crying during this. I'm a lifelong Tulsan, born and raised in North Tulsa. I am a product of TPS who proudly attended Emerson, Carver, and Booker T before my parents moved to a different part of the city. I'm also a former contract employee of TPS, as I was the pianist at Central before staying home with all 8 children. I am a member of the Shawnee tribe. I am the mother of a family built of various skin colors, including 2 little members of the Creek Nation. I am also a resident of Maple Ridge and a firm supporter of historic building preservation. All 8 of our children have or will hopefully have graduated from Lee. I like to joke that we'll be at Lee forever at this rate. I'd like to think that this makes my voice one that well represents many of the different faces at the heart of this matter. I attended Emerson in the mid-1980s when it was the most vibrant and thriving elementary school, a beautiful picture of unity in Tulsa in the 80s. Lee has been that same school for my children. It is backed by an almost 100-year history of success, and currently it is a model of diversity and unity. We love Lee. In fact, Lee means a lot to my family. I am parenting kids from extremely hard places, kids who have seen and endured more in their short lives than any person should experience in a full lifetime. Lee has been a unifier for my family, a school that everyone has been able to go to. My kids have gone to different schools. This is one of the only things that unifies my family. They all have different birth families and histories. For kids from all different places and paths, that's a big thing. Emerson was also my first introduction to the voting process. Simple enough, everyone gets a vote, majority wins. Earlier this year, that happened. We voted, majority won, Lee School was going to be the name. Little eyes are watching us, seeing that our word is not good. I told my kids their school name was going to be Lee School. Just kidding. It's still somehow offensive, even though we took away the Robert E. part of it. Does this mean I can't send my kids on Fridays now in their Spirit shirts, wearing Lee brand jeans? Is that going to be offensive to others if they're wearing Lee brand jeans? Sounds silly, but honestly, this is the ridiculous rhetoric I feel like we're teaching our kids through this. And whatever happened to learning from history, both the good and the bad, instead of actually trying to erase it? This could be the best opportunity for further unification for our kids, learning from past mistakes, doing our best to correct and further unify. And as you can see from the numbers that are here, all that's coming is more and more division. Lee School should have been the only option, or perhaps maybe a fellow upstanding person with the last name Lee could have been considered, but Council Oak, founded by the Creek Nation after they'd been driven from their own original lands, only to eventually lose their stake on this settlement of Tulsa as well. As I mentioned, I've got Creek Nation represented in my family, and I'm having a hard time understanding how it's not a controversial picket either. If TPS is truly a district of choice, then if people are still offended by the simple name Lee, 3 letters, L-E-E, they have the choice to go to a different school within TPS. That's the beauty of district of choice. I gotta hand it to you, it's also impeccable timing. We're about to celebrate our 100th year as a school, and now it's clouded with hate spewing from both sides. TPS doesn't have enough money. We just came off the end of a huge walkout, lots of division between teachers and lawmakers, and now this choice is causing further division. Right now, our only unifier seems to be that both sides are spewing hate. This could be our finest moment right now to show our kids that we can work together for everyone's best interest. But instead, I feel this opportunity is being wasted. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Doherty. My children attended Lee. I'm a past PTA and foundation president and have served in many other capacities as a volunteer over the past 7 years. Until the past year, these were the happiest years of our lives. I'm here tonight to advocate for the Lee community and to bear witness to what has occurred over the past year, to speak truth to the power at the front of the room, and to express my personal lack of confidence for the handling of the Lee school name process by members of this board and the superintendent. The Lee community went into last summer, the summer of 2017, as any other recent school year, a diverse yet cohesive community. We had just taken part in a new principal search, which involved meetings to identify what we were looking for in a leader. During that process, the refrain, "We are Lee," or "We just want to be Lee," emerged as parents identified the unique qualities present in our school community. We launched plans for our centennial to capture this concept, to explore the common bond that keeps us connected generation after generation, a unique circumstance for a public elementary school. Unfortunately, the school year started under a cloud of a national tragedy and unwanted attention on our school community, particularly concerning the safety of our children. Dr. Giss initiated a process to examine school names. We asked how Lee would be included, and we were told to trust the process. As a leader in the school community, I met with Board President Schreiber to discuss the events and how Lee would be involved. I had reached out to a mentor who was a founding member of the John Hope Franklin Reconciliation Center for advice on how to proceed with facilitating a conversation in Lee School. Ms. Schreiber discouraged me from having those conversations, She recounted to me the difficult process of naming the Booker T. Washington Fieldhouse and how, in her words, bitter enemies had been sworn. The PTA and foundation stayed neutral given there was not a process that respectfully engaged everyone. However, we did have 3 or 4 meetings with different board members and Dr. Gist to discuss the process. Dr. Decker, a Lee representative, attended only one of those meetings. But at each meeting, parents were told by the district, "You can be Lee School." Parent leaders were in communication with board members and Dr. Gist throughout the year to apprise them of how the situation was affecting our community and asking for assistance and guidance in different areas, which we did not receive. We were repeatedly dismissed and told, "This is not about Lee." But does anyone believe that? By March, the subject reached the board and it was finally clear to the district that it had deeply impacted the Lee community. However, Dr. Gist informed us that she had already spent all of her equity money. Later, President Schreiber admitted to parent leadership that the handling of the Lee School name by TPS had been malpractice. The first ad hoc committee included every single name that was submitted to the district, the survey. The recommendation was approved on May 7th. On May 21st, with no courtesy extended to the Lee community, 2 board members expressed regret and shame and began this process to delay approval. The school community was completely caught off guard. We were never apprised of the names of the new ad hoc members. The facilitator has a known conflict of interest. There was no opportunity for input. And what happened to civil discourse? There are great people on both sides of this conversation. TPS failed to bring together stakeholders to engage in conversation about how we could reconcile the name and preserve the Lee community. The only dialogue has occurred in this room, and it has been divisive. I can't speak for everyone, but I know for many in the Lee community, removing the namesake was already done in their minds. You'll hear countless times, "It's always just been Lee School. Leaders excelling every day." I truly think they felt it was acceptable because despite any connections with a former namesake, our school rejects racism and embraces each human being who walks through our doors. The missed opportunities, the mismanagement of this entire past year lie with many of you sitting up front. You failed to listen to the concerns of Lee School. You failed to provide leadership. You failed to allocate resources for our community, and you failed to follow your own policies. Instead, you've engineered a hostile takeover of the process of renaming one of the best schools in the district and demonstrated incompetence at every turn. As one citizen relayed in a recent article, how we do anything is how we do everything. And the regret and shame belong to you, Dr. Decker, to you, Dr. Gist, and to you, Ms. Schreiber. Lee School deserves a process that honors every voice, is transparent, and offers reconciliation for our school and for our community. Thank you.
Paul Doherty.
Board members and Dr. Gist, my name is Paul Doherty, and I would like to talk about process. Process is a word that has been used repeatedly over the last year by Dr. Gist and the board related to the fate of the name of Lee School. A year ago, when the decision was made to convene a committee to address school names, Dr. Gist spoke to process. With the Lee name leading the commentary, the Lee community asked to be engaged in the process, but was told it wasn't time. The community was left floundering. Prior to the announcement that the name would be rescinded, Dr. Gist and board members Percival and Schreiber met with the PTA and foundation boards. It is now time for us to engage in the process. Dr. Gist was asked if renaming the school to simply Lee was an option. She said yes. The process that the board outlined was initiated. The ad hoc committee was formed, the process followed, and a recommendation submitted to name the school Lee. Dr. Gist and the board said the process wasn't inclusive enough. The process that they had outlined, understood, and approved. They sent the ad hoc committee back to do the process again. The ad hoc committee regrouped and worked to develop a more inclusive and transparent process. Complete transparency was created. A survey including every name submitted was conducted. 60% of those that responded strongly favored the name Lee. Students were polled and overwhelmingly wanted Lee. Details were published. A recommendation was made to rename the school Lee School. The board voted in favor of the recommendation. Following the decision, Dr. Gist and board members Percival, Schreiber, and Decker heard from the Lee community. They heard the passion the community has for Lee and what it means. They received a report on the diversity and inclusion work that began the very day after the vote. An African-American woman said, "We are Lee. These are my brothers and sisters." Dr. Gist was asked to help spread the positive word about Lee, to help engage the resources of TPS in the diversity and inclusion work and the rebranding of the school. Shortly thereafter, board members Decker and Schreiber publicly communicated their personal shame related to the decision of the Lee name. Once again, the word process was used. The process was not inclusive enough. A new ad hoc committee is convened. A facilitator is chosen by TPS. This facilitator is the personal mentor of one of the most vocal leaders of the Never Lee initiative. Committee members are chosen. Many of those members are previous ad hoc members refused to participate because they no longer trusted in the process. The facilitator writes a blog that sounds like a fairy tale, but anyone who's been involved in this name conversation knows that a committee of diverse opinions cannot have so much harmony. The committee reviews in excess of 100 names. Where did these names come from? The committee is instructed, don't use the name Lee. The committee narrows to 5 names for the public to review. How did those 5 names get selected? The charrettes are conducted to gain community input. There appears to be virtually no way to statistically analyze the data that is collected. The committee meets to select the new school name. They land on Council Oak Elementary. How did they come to this conclusion? I believe if you look at the data, my guess is that the charrettes and surveys have a different answer than Council Oak Elementary. With no transparency into the process, we are left with so many questions. At one of the charrettes, I heard someone recommend a name that bridges the communities to Dr. Gist. Her response was, unfortunately, we are out of time. We are out of time because of a mismanaged process. Now is not the time to be out of time. Now is the time to say, we've got to get this right. We have to bring the sides together to an acceptable solution. The new ad hoc committee has been the most exclusive and the least transparent process to date. You have a petition that you've been given that has over 900 signatures on it, requesting a fair process to rename the school. Board members, I urge you to stop the manipulation, do your due diligence to understand why the most recent ad hoc committee is the most flawed yet. It is imperative that you reject the name Council Oak Elementary and revisit the process once again, this time to get it right.
Go. My name is Shane Matson. I'm a Lee parent, a parent of a Lee 4th grader incoming and an incoming Edison Eagle for 6th grade. I've spoken to this board. This will be my 3rd time. I hope never to speak to you all again. It makes me nervous, and we all have better things to do than listen to me. The first time I spoke was about the report cards, and I read everything that is written about this organization, your all's decisions, and I would make, if you want to explore ways to fix the system, we went from a 1-page report card 2 years ago to 3-page report card that's almost incomprehensible with this cumulative grade. So you've got that wrong. Let's fix that and make the grading system something that parents can actually understand. I'm a mess up. Yeah, I did not participate in the first ad hoc committee. I'm on the foundation and the PTA, and I felt that my opinion needed to be neutral. I was curious to see where the community would land. With the new process that began on June 18th, I asked to be a part of it and was accepted to be part of the ad hoc committee. And on that ad hoc committee, I will say, first, the first ad hoc committee's been vilified by just about everybody. And I wasn't on it. I'm not privy to what was discussed, but I do know that the people that were on it spent a lot of time in a short amount of time. And they were all of varying positions, and they came to a mutually agreeable decision. And the vilification of those people has to stop. They put their best foot forward with a crummy process engineered by the front of the room. So it's clear to everybody, when this process started, our facilitator met with everybody on the ad hoc committee privately, which was wonderful. Chance for her to feel out where we stood and ask some good questions. The question she asked that I really remember was, are there any names missing from this list? And I threw out an Osage name because before this was the Creeks, this was the Osage. We seem to have forgotten that. But I also said that Lee Elementary needed to be on the name, at which point she said that is not an option. So this meeting was prior to the first ad hoc committee meeting. And I said, well, I don't understand why it isn't, because item F1 from the June 18th board agenda didn't say anything about Lee not being an option. It said that it needed to be, the process needed to be more inclusive of the school community. At our first meeting, I asked Dr. Gist, who came to attend, if Lee would be considered, if this group of people came to that conclusion. She said it will not. And I said to you, I was unaware of a directive to that effect, and you said there is no directive. And I made sure that I understood you. Lee would not be considered, and that is what you said. Lee would not be considered. So we started a process where a significant portion of the city or the neighborhood feel that Lee is good. We associate positive feelings with our children walking to that elementary school. And the last 6 years there have been genuinely the best 6 years of my life. I've made incredible friends from various backgrounds. It's just been wonderful. I'm hopeful tonight that the school board votes to delay the decision and allow an ongoing dialogue between all the elements concerned with the name of the school, including the Lee community. This shouldn't be a tit for tat with petitions. Petitions are grueling. They get your data and they start sending you emails all the time. There has to be a better way to do this. And the way to do it is we talk to each other about, like adults. It's what we teach our kids, is how to confront challenges. My children at that school, they don't see color. That happens later, I guess. I hope not. But that's what we're working for. And to many of us, Lee is that is Lee to us. And it is offensive to some. But we need to sit down and talk about why and how do we move beyond it. And that's it. That's all I have.
Hello, my name is Andrew Crabtree, the infamous one that put up the last petition. I can tell you that they do send you a lot of crap. I've talked to a lot of alumni, ex-teachers, connections with this school. I've talked to a lot of people on both sides with the African American community, and talked about what's going on with the school. And the thing is that I think a lot of people that I've talked to, everybody has said we understand that Robert E. needs to come off this school. Everybody that I've talked to agreed with that. Where they start to get confused and frustrated is that other communities have had this same issue, and they've figured out a way to maintain those histories and those relationships and come up with positive new Lees. And so their schools aren't even as historic and have as strong a communities as we have. Lee's such a small L-E-E, and they're almost always capitalized. They use it almost like a symbol at that school. So we can both recognize that there's a lot of good things with this school, and there's a lot. There was the man that was associated with the school to begin with. We need to figure out a way to save the culture and the history and the emotional attachments that this school has. They're all positive for the community, while at the same time forgetting and replacing this man and what he stood for. There's a way we can do that we can still all come together. And I know that from speaking with people on both sides of this issue. This Lee brand, this Lee energy that's been around, it's taken 100 years for us to get where we are. 100 years to get here. Companies spend millions of dollars to be able to come up with a brand and defend a brand like this. People don't understand necessarily how important these are. You see people with Apple and Harley Davidson, they'll tattoo that on themselves. It becomes a part of who they are. Coca-Cola, for example, in 1985, they forgot this lesson. They learned this lesson the hard way. Everybody remembers it now, and you laugh about it. But people sat in a room like this, and they said, what if we can put what's in the can and make it better? It's better. And their focus group said it was better, and it was better. But the thing was that they didn't understand it was outside of the can. It was that label. It was that brand on that can that mattered. It was that they had the emotional attachment to. And that's what we're talking about here, is the emotional attachment with Lee Elementary School. And there are good Lees available. Other communities may not have been able to find people that were upstanding, but we were able to find people that fought for civil rights during World War II and stood up for African American soldiers. Robert E. Lee does not own the word Lee. That just drives me crazy. I looked it up. There are 5,989 Lees of some sort in the Tulsa phone book. That's a lot of Lees. You're going to have to be knocking on a lot of doors if you're going to clear off Lee from completely of Tulsa. I mean, it's crazy. Taylor Painter Wolf, the art teacher, stood up at this podium in May and said something that inspired me. She said, I'm going to get this quote exactly, "Other cities have come up with new, inspiring people with the same last name that they can be proud of." And she was right. That is the simple solution to this. We need to get together and talk, not a compromise of convenience, but truly something that we can all be proud of and unify around. And we want this Lee community. We don't want to start over from scratch with a one-day-old school. We want a school that's got this history and this huge community behind it to push this message of equality and to be a beacon of equality. They've got their shirts, their billboard, their benches and everything like that. All that spirit and all those benches could be billboards for equality. It just seems. I just want to ask the board to reject this forced Council Oak name and allow for a fair renaming process that allows us to keep what's good of our traditions, as well as the positive healing message for our future. I think that's still possible. After speaking with so many people on all sides and reaching out to the African American community, I want to thank Deborah for that, Dr. Gist. I know we can come together on this. I know if we sit down and speak, we can come up with a way to really keep a unifying name that we can be proud of, that serves the emotional connection with this amazing Lee community. And how do you get 200-year-old schools? You start out with a 100-year-old school, and then you just build on that. And I think we could do that. And as Martin Luther King said, it's always the right time to do what is right. And I know a lot of people have been talking about timing, but that quote just rings out in my mind. So thank you.
Richard Phillips, Rob Callen, Dan Sinnett, Patty Eaton, and Joshua Schultz are the next 5 people.
Hi, I'm Richard Phillips, and I come from a different perspective. I work for the Kravis family and the Raymond and Bessie Kravis Foundation. And for 17 years, they have funded Kravis Summer Arts Camp. It takes a prominent space on the new TPS website with a video. So for 17 years, they've helped over 5,000 people, 5,000 students. And there are other things. We've been the major donor for the Lee School Foundation, the Lee School Outdoor Classroom, and when there's been need for art supplies or art teachers, we have anteed up. So I'm here to represent their wishes, which was particularly Mr. Kravis's wishes, that you follow your process. That if you don't follow your process that you set up, then how can we, as concerned and generous citizens, trust our school board? Secondly, we've all read and heard that some of the current growth of our city has to do with the redevelopment of downtown and other areas, and part of that is tied to architecture. And it happens that Lee is an old building, and it happens that it's a beautiful building. So we cannot understand, and my friends and I, many who are parents at Lee, we cannot understand why one would want to deface a historic structure. Why would you want to cover or remove the LEE? It doesn't say Robert E. Lee, it says LEE over the doors. And why would you want to spend funds to replace benches and other things? There are so many other options. The funny one is Brenda Lee, who's a noted singer in the 1960s. But a serious, I'm going to teach everybody the songs, but a serious one could be Sam Lee, the social equality activist. I have other things to do tonight, but I'm a citizen of our city, and I've just been shocked at the change of process. And I hope you all listen to your crowd. Thank you. It would be my pleasure to recommend further funding. Thank you.
Rob Callen. Okay, we'll move on to Dan Sinnott.
Hello, my name is Dan Sinnott. I'm a parent. I thought we were calling it Site School 265 from now on, so I'm going to do that. I've spoken at previous meetings supporting a complete name change, but you may be surprised that I agree with most of the speakers that have spoken here tonight. This process has been long and exposed some real disagreements among parents, teachers, and our larger community. But there's obviously one thing that many of us can agree upon, and our community has been failed time after time by the school board and TPS administration. This is a process that obviously required strong, clear leadership, and we were forced to deal with confusion, secrecy, changing minds, and lack of focus. Gary Percival, who's absent tonight, was originally tasked with leading the ad hoc committee. Did not do the necessary work to reach outside of his comfort zone for opinions. I respect the work of my fellow parents on that committee. I don't believe Gary was qualified or ever should have been allowed near the committee chairmanship. He chased quick consensus and to avoid rocking the boat. His silence at previous meetings has been notable and disappointing. Dr. Gist saw the process failing under Gary Percival's leadership and allowed it to do so, prolonging the process. She has acted boldly in the past in outlining destination excellence and had the courage to challenge the names on our school buildings in the first place. She then has not seen her goal through, and the original committee failed under, as I've already said, Gary Percival. Ms. Schreiber and Decker voted to accept the name Lee Elementary after a months-long discussion on the topic, then changed their mind 2 weeks later, expressing shame and regret at their original vote. While I believe they should be commended for their changing of minds, they must be held accountable for their original vote, their lack of consideration prior to that vote, and the damage their change of heart has caused. It is difficult now for anyone to consider a vote by the board as final. This is evidenced by another petition circulating that's been referenced many times tonight. It is the fault of TPS that this process ever felt like a vote, or this is where I'm going to differ with the previous ones, ever felt like a vote or a seeking of majority opinion. The goal should never have been to please the majority of whom would be the natural question to ask. As a current parent at Site 265, my opinion should not matter more than that of others in the broader Tulsa community. As a matter of equity within TPS, all of Tulsa should consider them stakeholders in our schools. The most recent petition refers to legitimate stakeholders, echoing supremacist dog whistles we hear often today. The families of Maple Ridge are no more stakeholders than the families throughout Tulsa. To further address this petition, it asserts that community input was limited and ignored, and implies the process of the ad hoc committee was not legally sufficient, open, above board, fair, ethical, or inclusive. I believe this description more aptly describes the actions of the original committee. And in my opinion, it does not get much more open than 3 forums to express opinions to the committee, multiple emails from Principal Flowers, blog posts, and multiple Tulsa World articles leading up to the forums. We were smacked in the face with this the first time through. It was like, oh, by the way, the name's rescinded, we're recommending Lee, thanks. Let's go on to the next thing. This was not that process. There was thoughtful consideration here. The goal was never to find the majority It was to unstitch just a little bit of the fabric of racial injustice that still exists today. This process began with a strong statement that the ideals of Robert E. Lee would not stand as ideals within TPS. Rescinding the name was the right decision and will be judged as such by history. The actions TPS administration and the board since that rescindment has reopened the discussion of Lee's value as a leader and one whom should be honored. Please allow your vote. Hold on, I was confused about this stuff. We need to vote on this tonight, in my opinion. This kicking the can down the road has gone far enough. The committee has done their necessary work, and it's time for us to hear the voice of the leaders of our community. Thank you.
Patty Eaton. Joshua Schultz. Oh, excuse me, sorry.
Hello, I'm Patty Eaton and a teacher at Lee Elementary and been there for quite a while. I've even had my own children go through the school. But that's not why we're up here. We have a small group representing a larger group that was at school today, and we were in shock that it was a motion to postpone only because we've been going through the process for now a year. I guess the first petition started on August 15th of last year, and we began the school year with police in attendance the first day. We had media, and it hasn't stopped. And so as a result, today was shocking because we cannot believe it's a year later and we're going through quite possibly another year or so of this. So it's been, I don't know if anybody else has anything else to say, but that's really all we're here to say is that, we're ready to start the school year with a name, and we all have different feelings on what name we want. And we're not there to express that because I think for the most part, we all want to lie right in the middle because we love parents on both sides. We love children on both sides. We're not there to do that. We want to respect everybody, and we do want to respect opinions, but we do want to start the year with a name. I mean, bottom line. That's it. Anybody else have anything to say? All right.
Joshua Schultz.
Hello everyone, my name is Joshua Schultz. I'm a parent of a rising second grader at Site 265 Elementary. And because that's what the name is right now. And in the newspapers, and other people are still calling it Lee. We got a phone call today saying, hi, this is the Lee Elementary School. And I think what this is it's evidence that there's a vacuum going on right now. And like the teacher said, we need to start this school year with a name. And when there's a vacuum, the status quo rushes to fill it. Or even the status quo ante rushes to fill the vacuum. Council Oak Elementary wasn't my preference. I think it would have been fitting for us to name this school after someone who is involved in the abolitionist movement or the civil rights movement. It would have been a nice gesture, given that we've had 100 years of supporting the lost cause of the Confederacy and their ideology. Lee, L-E-E, is not just 3 letters. It's a name, it's a symbol, it's a Confederate general, but more importantly than that, it's a myth. Robert E. Lee died in 1870, if I remember correctly. And no sooner was Robert E. Lee in the ground than he began being held up as a symbol of white supremacy. One of the things that people admired most about Lee in the late 19th century is that he respected property. Let that sink in for a moment. What do you think people were talking about when they said property? This can't be erased. We cannot come in and say Lee means whatever we want it to mean. And so for that reason, Lee needs to come off that school. We need to have a name that we can be proud of. And so I'm here to say, let's put a name on there that's not my preference, but was brought up through thoughtful deliberation. Because the process that started at the last meeting in June was one that I got to participate in. I got to go to the charrette. I got to speak to the committee members. I got to give feedback on each name. Leadership is not about following the majority vote. Leadership is about showing what the majority vote should be one day. This process, with deliberation, with community input from guys like me, I'm just a dad at the school, but also from other people in Tulsa who may someday have kids and may someday send them to this school, or may someday buy a house in the school district and send their kids to school. We love this school. We love school site 265. We want to give it a good name. Let's make the school better. Council Oak is a symbol of rebirth. It's a symbol by a people who are an oppressed people group, who had tremendous injustice perpetuated against them by the US government. And they rebuilt. And we can rebuild. We can move on. We can make this school better. So let's not let nostalgia tie us to the name of the General of the Army of Northern Virginia. Let's move forward. We need a fresh start. Our children deserve a fresh start. We can still love our school. We can celebrate 100 years of learning without tying it to Robert E. Lee. So let's have Council Oak Elementary. I'll volunteer to design a new t-shirt. I'll volunteer to roll up my sleeves just like I have been when the school was a name that turned my stomach. I still want to pitch in. I still want to do my part. Let's make this school a wonderful school. Let's give it a name that our children can be proud of when they're our age and tell people where they go to school. So I urge you to give these teachers a name, give this school, give our children a name we can be proud of. Please name it Council Oak Elementary. Please move forward. This was a good process. They listened to us. They listened to people like me. Thank you.
That concludes our speakers on item F1. So from there, I'll take any motion to approve item F1.
Second.
Are there any questions regarding F1? Just to be clear, the delay is just to accommodate putting this on information and then putting it on action, which is our typical process. We have a first reading. We don't vote. That informs the public, and we vote on the second one. So if there's, just to be clear, that's, in terms of delay, that is what the delay is about at this time. So with that, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Shelton?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. From there, I'll move to F2. This is an item recommending to individuals employed as certified teachers approve salary increases required by House Bill 1023XX effective August 1st, 2018 for the 2019 school year. Specifically approve the amended 2018-19 teacher salary schedule such that teachers to receive the required increase in pay, including their career increments and progress 1 year on the salary schedule to reflect their appropriate numbers of years taught. Oh, okay. Dr. Gist is saying that people feel like they might be confused. There is another item, G1, that pertains to Council Oak. So we'll move through this part of the agenda and we'll get to G1 pretty quickly. So please stay and we'll get to that as quickly as possible. But there's 2 items regarding that matter. We've just completed 1. So is there a motion to approve F2?
I will happily move approval.
Second.
Second.
Lots of seconds on that one. Dr. Decker, you have a question.
Yes, I just wanted to stop and celebrate because I know the vote will go quickly and we'll move on. So it's really time to celebrate the salary increase that we worked so hard for many, many years. It was done. It's not enough. We clearly know that at this table, as do you in the room. But we still need to celebrate that we got some of what we've asked for.
$500 million restored. Great start. With that, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Shelton.
Aye.
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 Aye. Item F3, with regard to individuals employed as certified principals and assistant principals, approve the salary increases required by House Bill 1023XX effective August 1st, 2018 for the 2019 school year. Specifically for the 2018-2019 school year, their salary shall be increased by the relevant increases reflected in the teacher's salary schedule based on the employee's number of service years worked and recognized in the state of Oklahoma, in addition to the standard career increments and adjustments. Is there a motion to approve F3?
So moved. Second.
Any questions? Again, a place to celebrate. With that, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Fate?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And F4, with regard to all certified personnel other than teachers, principals, assistant principals whose job descriptions require certification, approve the salary increases required by House Bill 1023XX effective August 1st, 2018 for the 2018-19 school year. Specifically for the 2018-19 school year, their salaries shall be increased by the relevant increases reflected in the teacher salary schedule based on the employee's number of service years worked and recognized in the state of Oklahoma, in addition to the standard career increments and adjustments. Any?
Move approval. Second.
Madam President.
Yes. Yes, please.
House Bill 1023XX specifically excludes superintendents from that, and so just wanted to make note that that is actually in the law, which is why it's not written here.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions regarding that? So we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. Ms. Fate?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that concludes our action agenda this evening, and we'll move to the information agenda, which Dr. Gist will introduce.
Thank you, Madam President. So as a reminder, information items are brought before the board for their consideration. They're not acted upon in the meeting at which they're discussed, but rather are there to listen, to hear from the community, and to talk and ask questions of one another and of the Tulsa Public Schools team. And so while it is not required that the board bring items to be an information item prior to action, it is something that we strive to do because in seeking to be transparent and have as much engagement as we can. And so for that reason, item G1 is an information item recommending the renaming of the former Robert E. Lee Elementary School, also known as School 265 at the moment. This will be introduced by our board president, President Schreiber.
Item G1 recommends renaming of the school formerly known as Robert E. Lee Elementary to Council Oak Elementary effective August 20th, 2018 upon conclusion of the regularly scheduled board meeting. Council Oak represents the historic founding of Tulsa and symbolizes hope, the strength of the school community, and the value of perseverance and unity in working to build a brighter future for children. So we have several folks signed up to speak on this item as well. So the same protocol, if you can come, and we'll do it 5 at a time. And stick to the 5 minutes per person. So the first 5 will be Keisha Pierce, Leslie Kern, Principal Chief Floyd, or possibly a representative of his, Neely Sudol, John Huff Hines, and Elizabeth Bell. Those are the first 5 folks. Keisha and Leslie are going to go together, and that's great. We probably have a stool or some kind of step. We got it?
Good evening, Dr. Guest, members of the board, and crowd. I am a member of the ad hoc committee, and on behalf of the ad hoc committee, I will be presenting this information to you. On June 27, 2018, a modified lead ad hoc committee was formed, consisting of new members, original ad hoc committee members, as well as third-party facilitator. Before the first committee meeting of this group, members had the opportunity to share concerns, questions, frustration, exhaustions, and fears in one-on-one manner with the facilitator. Once gathered, our group was encouraged to reflect on how the identity found within personal names are relevant to the process. A name has a story, gives an account, conjures an image, contributes to an identity, as given for a reason. The meeting concluded with each member agreeing to research and reflect on the collection of approximately 120 proposed names received in various manners over the course of the year. We were asked to begin narrow individual choices to select few prior to the following meeting, making way for visible commonalities among name preferences.
We came together once again on July 9th, 2018 to discuss the 40-plus school names that the group shared in common. The selection of names celebrated women, men, racial diversity, and inclusion. The names included historical figures, current community members, activists, geographical icons and places, character traits, as well as new Lee names in Lee School, using the categories of facts, feelings, strengths, and concerns. Each committee member had the opportunity to explore the proposed staff, school names, consider their potential impact on students, parents, teachers, alumni, and the wider Tulsa community. After a rich discussion about what kind of feedback we wanted to gather from the wider community to help with the final decision, the 5 school names emerged. We then invited the community to share the feedback in community charrettes as we continue to consider the final group of proposed names: Abraham Lincoln, Clara Looper, Woody Guthrie, Maple Ridge, and Council Oak. 3 community charrettes on different dates were offered. These charrettes were opportunities for everyone to provide a valuable input that helped guide us to our final selection. The committee also published an online survey monitoring the feedback requested from the community charrettes and open to the committee for a week.
On July the 24th, 2018, we met for a final time. We first took some time to consider our own culture and potential biases. We considered the responsibility of making a decision that represents the school as a whole and reflect the collective will of the community. We discussed in detail, read aloud to each other, reflected on, as well as compared and contrasted both the insights and the concerns that have been shared by the variety of school stakeholders through the community charrettes as well as the online survey. The community examined the data for the charrettes and the online survey, showing the overall impression of the names on a scale from strongly negative to strongly positive.
We examined all the findings, the written content, as well as the scaled data, and we also listened closely as we shared our own thoughts and feelings. Through an inch-deep series of conversations and exercises that made up the final meeting, the list of 5 names became a list of 3. After more dialogue, the 3 names became 2. We finally arrived at one remaining choice. This is the choice that is recommended to the Tulsa Public Schools Board of Education today, Council Oak Elementary School.
Despite the anticipation that the board might not approve the name, several variants of Lee were considered in each of the 3 meetings of the ad hoc, including a potential new name at Lee, and combining Lee with the new name emphasis Lee. Also, when the proposed names were narrowed to 16 through a careful consideration process, Lee School was the only variant of those to make the list. After carefully considering facts, feelings, strengths, and concerns about the top 16, Lee did not make the top 5. In the final meeting, after the community shared, we considered newly proposed Lee names as well as the potential for combining the selected name with Lee or a reference to the geographical location. After discussion, it was decided that Lee as a new name would no longer be considered and that the process would continue with just the top 5 selections as presented to the community. Once Council Oak Elementary was decided upon, the committee once again considered whether the new name would contain a reference to Lee. The decision was reached that it would not. While it may seem in the community that the committee was operating under instructions or guidelines that the name would not be approved or considered by the board, nonetheless, we did in fact continue to consider whether or not the new name should include a reference to Lee.
With the final selection of Council Oak, there was still a concern regarding the historical preservation of the building, artwork, and associated landmarks, such as the stadium arch and the football field. We share and desire for this to be handled respectfully. We are mindfully through this process of needing healing work through the Lee School within the school committee. It was difficult at times to keep the focus on naming with the grief of losing the name Lee School. It is clear to all of us that the community is proud of the school, its culture, and the engagement of the surrounding neighborhood. In the end, most of us clearly felt that the committee had been honored and carefully accomplished to the challenging process of renaming Lee Elementary. For many of us, our top choice changed time to time again as we considered the multiple perspectives of the data that came from the community input.
The committee recognizes that within all of these data points, there are those that stand firmly at both ends of the discussion. From the name should never have been rescinded to the name should have changed completely. The overall process has times been messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes divisive, but nonetheless plays a virtual role in continuing a foster of community aligned with the school's guidance principles and values, as well as Tulsa Public Schools Destination Excellence Strategic Plan. We respect the opinions of all that was involved, and we are grateful to everyone that took the time to participate in this process.
The historical Council Oak tree, located just steps away from our campus, marks the location of the Creek tribe in 1836, established by their home after resignation from their native lands to our east. Referred to the founding of Tulsa, Tulsi, or Old Town, the Council Oak tree became the physical location for tribal gatherings lit by the embers carried from their prior homeland. The Council Oak tree symbolizes hope and forgiving the past with the future. The tree represents resilience and a new beginning to the Muscogee Creek Nation, and now affords to the school community the same opportunity. The Council Oak tree presents our school and the greater Tulsa community with a moment to dig deeper.
Chief Floyd. Okay, Neely Sudol.
Hello everyone, my name is Neely Sudol. I'm the Public Relations Manager for the Muscogee Creek Nation, and I will be delivering the statement on behalf of Principal Chief James R. Floyd. Thank you, Tulsa Public Schools, for allowing the Muscogee Creek Nation to have a voice as you make a decision on changing the name of Lee Elementary to Council Oak Elementary. It is a great honor to have a primary institution named after any name or subject affiliated with an Oklahoma tribe. And we look forward to the opportunity to educate our children about the very land they walk on every day. Their classrooms were built on Creek land that was originally allotted to a Creek citizen before statehood. Through a commitment of involvement with the school and the community, We look forward to this opportunity to educate about this silent yet powerful piece of history, which is Council Oak. It is an important piece of our past, and it is also of yours and to everyone in this room, because it is the beginning of Tulsa, the city of Tulsa. Many folks don't know that Tulsi or Tulsa is a Creek word meaning old town. My people were here first. It is where our government met by the old oak tree that sits on the hill that overlooks the city in the 1830s. We lost loved ones and millions of acres of land when we were forcibly removed from our homelands in Georgia and Alabama. Today, we still carry the trauma with us from that time, yet we moved on and we created our government, and we're still here. That's why we believe it's important to tell our story through the renaming of Lee Elementary. It represents the location to tell our story through the renaming of this school. It represents the location, and we have an obligation to help the school and educate those around the area, our people, and our values. It's our story of resilience of our people, this area, and this community. Thank you, and Mado.
Mr. Huff-Hines.
Thank you. Continued peace. Yes, peace. Greetings to our Honorable Superintendent, Dr. Gist, our Madam President, Susan Schreiber, and each of our Honorable Tulsa Public School Board members and honorable staff and team. We are grateful for all the teachers and citizens of this great city, Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's a joy to be with you on the 6th day of August in the year of our loving Lord Jesus Christ, 2018. Yes, through the voices of many intelligent, sincere people, I have heard of the positive, the light, the brightness, and if I may, the glory of the Lee School community. Well, God's Word, the Holy Bible, speaks of going from glory to glory, and Council Oak Elementary could be another level of glory. Rationale, I appreciate some of the rationale surrounding G1. Council Oak represents the historic founding of Tulsa and symbolizes hope, the strength of the school community, and the value of perseverance and unity, working to build a brighter future for children. According to an article by Lori Kane, this oak tree became the site of Tulsa's first church. This tree is still alive and remains a symbol of our early settlers' strong spirit. And morning prayer. Yes, this site is also associated with morning prayer. Prayer helped birth this great community, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Our Christ-honoring spiritual foundations can be emphasized as we embrace this new name, Council Oak Elementary, and am seeing a radiant future for this soon-to-be even greater school. Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Bell, and I'm the mother of an upcoming first grader student at Lee Elementary. I'm late to this conversation, although I've been involved over the past year with a lot of conversations with parents on both sides of this issue. And I'd like to first thank all of you in the room for being here tonight. We all have families and other places we could be, including the board, including Dr. Gist. So I'd like to thank all of you because I know that this represents us caring about our community to this level to being here tonight. So Lee is an inspiring school. We moved here in 2010 from North Carolina, and people told us that there were 2 elementary schools where our daughter should go. We could either go to Lee Elementary School or we could go to Elliott Elementary School. So we lived downtown for the first 3 years that we were in Tulsa, and we bought a home actually down the road in Elliott School District. But then we started to hear about things that were going on at Lee. Some of the Reggio teaching that was happening at the preschool. We heard about the leadership. We heard about the parent involvement and the foundation at Lee, and the strength of the school drew us to put in our transfer, even though we had bought a home in a different school that was warranted a very high strength for elementary. And so we moved our daughter. We felt like we got her into Harvard the day that we found, and we're from very competitive school districts. I'm from Washington, D.C. And when she got the letter to get into Lee, I called everyone on the East Coast. So those of you who feel strongly about Lee, I feel strongly about Lee too. And people were questioning why we transferred her from Elliott to Lee, but the reasons we did, I think, are evident to the parents that have children and the teachers in this room. Lee is a passionate community, as you can tell this evening, and as you could tell over the last year. The parents of all different backgrounds committed to the school in different ways, whether they're parents who can volunteer each day or parents who commit financially to the school through events and the foundation. And many of those parents are here tonight, and I'd like to thank them personally for the work that they do on behalf of the school. And I think that's why this passion is where all this feeling is coming from and where the frustration is coming from as well. I think this evening you've heard a lot of anger and a lot of resentment. And I think the process, the transparency in the process has been problematic. And so you've heard that side. I don't need to rehash that. I do want to bring up some things about my daughter's experience, one of which is that when she started at Lee, she learned about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and she's 4 years old. And she came home and she talked about him sacrificing his life because of his beliefs that all men are equal. And my 5-year-old, she turned 5 during her kindergarten year, preschool year, and I knew that I had selected the right school. But since last August, we've been grappling, myself since I went to University of Virginia, with hate crimes. And I thought to myself that if hate crimes could happen in my beloved town of Charlottesville, they could certainly happen here in Tulsa. And it seemed to me that there were enough people expressing their sadness about the naming of the school continuing to be Robert E. Lee that it was worth discussion. And so I found out that the schools were being evaluated for systematic name changes. And because I'm from the East Coast, from a liberal background, I thought this was kind of a non-issue. I didn't really understand how strongly people would feel. And I think that that is my own bias and my own blind eye because of the privilege that I've had to be in the elementary schools and the schooling experience that I've had. And so I've tried to grapple with this with my own daughter and talk with her about what a school should mean. And I firmly believe that the name Robert E. Lee is not a name that or Lee, honestly, is a name that I want my daughter to go to school or her friends, and I don't believe anyone should feel comfortable in a school with this name. And so even though during the first year I didn't notice that there were pictures of Robert E. Lee hung in the school, I didn't notice that there were Confederate flags hanging. I didn't realize that a birthday party that was celebrating, I thought the foundation of the school was actually celebrating Robert E. Lee's birthday. That is my own privilege. That is my privilege that I missed all of that. And so what I'd like to ask as we consider this change is that we consider our own privilege and our own experience and our own education as we grapple on both sides. We're going to have to go through a period of healing as parents on both sides of this issue. And personally, I don't really feel like there are sides. I feel like we need to open our hearts to really understand what this means going forward as a school name. I know there are problems and people have been very passionate about the process. I personally don't know enough to make a comment about that, except for that I was involved in the charrettes and was grateful for the opportunity that was given to us this summer for further consideration. I
really don't like the gaveling off, especially when it's a kid. One way to make yourself more popular. I'm going to call Lindsay Barber, Scott Carter, Chris Moore, Marcus McCarr, and Michael Womack for the next 5 speakers.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Barbour, and my 2 children both attend what was formerly known as Robert E. Lee Elementary. There's not a whole lot to say that hasn't already been said, but I just wanted to take this time to encourage everyone to rethink the words love, compassion, empathy, and respect. I pride myself on being able to put myself in other people's shoes, but as I have embarked on a personal journey to understand who I am as a white person, and to understand racial justice, I realized that there are some things that people of color have experienced that I haven't experienced, and that because of that, it's difficult for me to understand. I may not understand initially, but the only way that I've been able to begin to understand has been to listen to my brothers and sisters of color with an open heart. This name change conversation opened my eyes to my own privilege, because I walked into the conversation expecting to be heard. And I realized that African Americans do not walk into situations with that same expectation. In fact, they have not had a voice really for the history of our country. And so, I think that is why we haven't heard a lot from the African Americans in our community, specifically the Lee community. But I don't think that that's because they don't care. I think that's because of a lot of other reasons, and I don't want to speak for them. But I'm grateful to those that are in this room that have spoken multiple times about their experiences and have given a voice to that. Some of you in this room have expressed that you don't feel heard through this process. But I challenge you to look inside and put yourself in other people's shoes and reflect on how, that might help you to understand what African Americans in particular have gone through, as well as Creek Indians, as well as the indigenous people that were here before us. And I believe that the name Council Oak really does honor people that have not received all the honor that they deserve in the past. I also like that it ties in with our rodeo theme, and that it's something that we can unify around. I went to a school that had a Native American mascot and symbol, and I took a lot of pride in that, being an Oklahoman. When I would leave Oklahoma, I was unaware that a Native American population, a high Native American population in your school was actually not something that everyone experienced. So I'm excited about our kids being able to learn from that. And I'm just really excited for us to come together as a community, for us to pool our infinite resources, because we really are so privileged to live where we live, to be in the school district we are in, to have our children's education options that we have. And I want us to take advantage of that and to help our kids embrace this new name and to come up with their creativity to rethink all of our traditions and not forget them, but move forward, create new ones, and come back together as the families of Council Oak. Thank you.
Hi. This is difficult for a lot of us. Okay, my kids went to Lee. The teachers that taught my school, my kids are here. Patty, you're absolutely right. We need to get this right for the students. I live right across from Lee. I see the families that park their car right in front of my house when they take their kids there. I am the descendant of Confederate veterans. I used to believe that there was honor to the Confederacy. I believe that no more. I'm like a former smoker now. Okay? For me, it was Dylan Roof. It was Dylan Roof coming in to Mother Emanuel Church and went in there and shot 9 people that he was invited to attend. And he has all those rebel flags. And I know there's going to be people that say, no, that's not what it is. Maybe not for you, but for other people it will be. Okay? And that's the thing that we have to make clear about this. And I am so happy that I came to this conclusion before Charlottesville a year ago. I don't know how people can just think that, oh, Charlottesville is just some rogue thing. It's not. A Confederate names on public buildings opens the door for racism and for white supremacy. Not everybody will do it, but it is there. It legitimates it. I know, because I used to believe it.
I used to think, well, there's nothing wrong with it. The school's named after it. My kids went there. They sang a song for Robert E. Lee. Okay, they don't do it anymore. Okay, I guess. The portrait's gone from Lee, from the building, I guess. But the song that my daughter knows, she's starting Booker T. Washington this year, is "Hooray for Robert E. Lee, a soldier, a scholar, a leader was he, a kind man, a gentleman, a honest one too. That is why our school is named after you." That's what my daughter and son knows. And they teach this to kindergartners, some of whom are black. My daughter told me that this was a song that they sang in school, okay? I don't know, I did not make this up, okay? So don't cast aspersions on me, okay? All right, on. The birthday cake. They don't do the birthday cake anymore. The birthday cake is the same week as Dr. King's week. They have Dr. Robert E. Lee was born on January 19th. They have Dr. King's week, and they have a birthday cake for Robert E. Lee's birthday. They don't do it anymore, but they did it not only a couple years ago. After Dylan Roof, I went in, I had cause to go into the building. That Confederate portrait of Robert E. Lee was still up. I heard that they just now took it down with a ceremony to take it down. I don't know if that's true or not, okay? But I'm saying that it was just taken down. I know I'm getting people upset. And I'm turning, and this is what it gets. I ask everybody to reflect on how Confederate memorials and Confederate iconography on public spaces is absolutely devastating for our country in this era of Trump, in this era of white supremacy being enabled. That is what this is about. We do not want to saddle our children anymore with dysfunctions and lies. The lost cause of the Confederacy is a lie. Someone just told me today, Lee didn't have slaves. He had slaves, man, and he split them apart. He was a white supremacist. He fought, and they said, well, Thomas Jefferson had slaves. Thomas Jefferson didn't raise up arms against this country. What we have done with the Confederacy narrative, if we have legitimized treason, think what's happening today. How people can't say, no, we weren't treasonous, we're really Americans, and you're flying a Confederate flag. What's happening today? Well, it's not treason. Did you see the Ohio rally? I'd rather be Russian than Democrat. That's what's happening here now, okay? So let me just do this real quick. I know no history to the legitimacy of it. The portrait was gone. No Confederate iconography on public spaces. We cannot pass this on to the future. We have to lead and not saddle our children with this dysfunction. I guarantee even smokers in this room would not want their children to smoke. So I ask everybody to reflect upon their own understanding of these matters and try to evolve for ourselves. Don't look back, look forward. That's what I have to say.
Chris Moore.
My name is Chris Moore. I serve as pastor at Fellowship Congregational United Church of Christ and also have 2 children in Tulsa Public Schools. As a member of the Superintendent's Council that helped formulate the process for changing school names, I'm happy to see that some of the suggestions we made were implemented in the second effort at Lee Elementary. One of our assertions as a group was that the names of schools were public statements about who and what we honor, and as such they needed to represent not only the student body, parents, and immediate community of a particular school, but also the larger Tulsa community in a manner that is equitable. And you can't make those kinds of decisions without a lot of input, so I'm glad that the process has tried to include as many voices, stories, and narratives as possible. There's a difference between remembering history and honoring figures from history. And while I understand that the name Lee has long been attached to a school with a profound story and deep significance to many people in our city, I also recognize that there's a larger narrative at work here. As a pastor, I understand that change is hard. I have had people tell me during remodeling projects, if you change those drapes or that carpet, I'm leaving the church. And I have learned that when they say such things, it's rarely about the drapes or the carpet. It is about identity. It's about definition. It's about some profound commitment, devotion, and care that has been given to a place, creating treasured memories and valuable lessons. And sometimes the prospect of change seems to threaten all of that. Change is hard, to be sure. It comes with grief and pain, and yet nothing is more painful than staying stuck in a place where we don't belong, a place that doesn't represent who we truly are, a place that honors in a name that which we do not honor in our values. As a pastor, I know a lot about grief, and one of the things that I've learned is that grief comes in 3 parts: coping with what is lost, the remaking of life that follows, and the tension that lies between them. And that grief surely impacts both sides of this debate. It seems a small thing, a school name, but it represents so much more, for we are all engaged in our own ways in a larger question about who we are and who we will become, as we wrestle with our complicated and troubled history with race in the United States. And in the midst of that struggle, we have to recognize, particularly at this moment in history, that our world needs bigger dreams. And for that, we will need to be able to grieve and move forward, to seek that remaking of life, even if it is uncomfortable, for great things rarely come from our comfort zones.
Been so many good speakers here, it's very impressive. I see a lot of people in this room. I see a friend over here whose father went there probably about the same time my mom, in the mid-20s. My siblings, 4 of them, and I went K through 6 at Lee. I don't support Robert E. Lee. I don't care about Robert E. Lee. I care about Lee. I don't want to be calling it the school, what is it? No, where we went. We grew up playing sports there, and we'd play Bird, we played Elliott, well, that's junior high, I'm sorry. We played Elliott, Holmes, Marshall, McClure. Nobody ever knew what their first names were. Nobody cared. This is all kind of new. I mean, we've been around 99 years, and suddenly we're going, this is god-awful. We need to change this. Nobody I've ever known at Lee ever even thought about the Confederacy. No one ever had a flag. Nobody cared. Okay. I'm also speaking for a lot of people that didn't have the gumption or the desire to speak, and people that are at home that were PTA presidents, as was my mother. And I was approved to volunteer at Lee a couple years ago. And I thought, you know what, I'm a lot more needed at a North Tulsa school. Okay, I'll just spell it, Legacy. You know, it's 6400 MLK. So that's where I've been. And for so many of these people that are against keeping the name Lee, I'd like to know how much you donated to the foundation and how much you volunteered there, or how much you volunteered elsewhere where you could be used better. By the way, I was thinking of the leadoff speaker. Remind me of leading off for the Lee Raiders for 5 years in baseball. For some of the other people who are so against the Lee, I'm fascinated that you would send your kid there if you're so against there. And people come from all over the city wanting to be there at this good school. It's okay. So regarding racism, I was amazed that people are taking such a racist stand. And I mean, I read Malcolm X's book in high school, and the gist of it, I was like, whoa, that's racism. But I disagree a little bit with somebody who was talking about stakeholders in the neighborhood, because we, excuse me, I'm a little rusty here. The stakeholders, let's see, Malcolm X, oh yeah. God dang it. So for this school I volunteer at, I also throw a lot of money. I've sent people to the kids on the field trips to the aquarium. I've never even been there. But the stakeholders, the Malcolm X thing, you know, I read a while ago that someone was like, we can't really be happy or function unless the Lee name is taken off there. Well, you know what? I'm going to be happy and I'm going to function great, and I have no desire to take the name off of a Malcolm X school that someone wants around the country, which they have Malcolm X's around the country, of course we know. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna split. Thank you.
Do I get to hit the start button myself on this? My name is Mike Womack. I'm a lead parent and going to be a lead parent for a while. My oldest is starting 3rd grade, and my 4-year-old will be there once he gets past some medical issues. And Womack number 3 is in utero right now, so she'll be starting in about 5.5, 6 years. I think there's a lot of legitimate opinions and feelings on both sides of this issue. I don't know if I can say I'm on one side or the other. I think I'm on both, which probably means I'm on neither. Removing Robert E. From Lee Elementary was absolutely the right thing to do. There's no reason why any public building in this country should be named for somebody who declared war on the United States of America in furtherance of slavery. So, that's good. But we've had a lot of talk today about the process, and I think that's where we're in this unfortunate situation we're in now, because I think that chopping the name off, the original decision just to make it Lee Elementary, was an act of cowardice. It was not, you know, somebody talked about dog whistles, and I grew up in rural Oklahoma, so maybe I'm a little more in tune with those. That was a dog bullhorn. When you won't put another name up there, then it is still Robert E. Lee. It's kind of like if we had an Adolf Hitler high school and we dropped the Adolf, we wouldn't be fooling anybody. But I also think that there's a lot of folks here, we've heard from some of them, my friend Paul Doherty and Mr. Madsen, who, parents that donate a lot of time and the efforts into this school. We've heard about the Lee brand that's been built up that doesn't have anything to do with Robert E. Lee or celebrating dead traitors. But it does have something to do with our identity as a community. And that, I think, is where this process is broken down, because the cowardice decision to split the name in half, we're now having an overreaction to. When there's an easy solution, it's a 2-part process. It's very simple. Find someone whose last name was Lee, and if they didn't declare war against the United States of America in furtherance of slavery, name the school after them. I don't care who it is. We could be the Tommy Lee Rockstars. Name it after the Motley Crue drummer. I don't care. But we also have an opportunity to right a historic wrong, and make no doubt about it. Naming public buildings after Confederate heroes, or not Confederate heroes, Confederate traitors, is part of the continued dehumanization of the black community in America. So we can make it a little bit. We can make a step in the right direction. We could go with Harper Lee, who wrote an American masterpiece on racial inequality. We could go with my personal pick, Spike Lee, and we could probably get him here for the renaming ceremony. We're taking the Robert E. Lee off because we're going to do the right thing. Name it after Spike Lee, who has helped educate a lot of folks, myself included, on a lot of what it means to grow up in the black community that I will never know. But I do think that this decision by whoever made it to completely throw away the Lee, to go with Council Oaks, not even to consider a name of someone else named Lee, is an overreaction to the cowardice decision to split the name in half in the first place. And so I would submit that the board should consider my 2-prong approach, finding someone whose name Lee didn't declare war against the United States of America and further slavery, and just go from there. And so that way, the folks who have worked so hard to build this community and to build this brand, and that have this identity of Lee School that has nothing to do with celebrating a dead traitor, can still have the Lee, but we get rid of the psychological terror that comes along with naming buildings after Confederates. That's all I got.
Our next 5 are Greg Bledsoe, Tyrone Billingsley, Heather Mulhern, Mark Sanders, and Jim Helm.
My name is Greg Bledsoe. I've lived in the Lee District since 1979 when I graduated from law school. My stepson attended Lee. My 7 grandchildren have been TPS students, 2 at Lee, and 2 others are citizens of the Muskogee Creek Nation. I believe the name of the school must be changed to something other than Lee, and I support the committee's recommendation to name it for the historic Council Oak. During the late 1980s, I was a member of a legal organization that navigated a name change. We discovered that the person for which our group was named, a deceased prominent local attorney and former judge, had been a member of the Klan. We voted to change the name of our group to Council Oak in honor of the historic symbol of the founding of Tulsa. We did this with the full knowledge that the Creek Nation brought African slavery to Indian Territory, but we felt this did not diminish the inspiring story of the Council Oak. We became aware that the Klan that reestablished their town into the Council Oak were traditional, mostly full-blood Upper Creeks. They built a peaceful community where they were entirely unaware of the storm clouds gathering in the world outside as the Civil War approached. While it cannot be conclusively known if they tolerated slavery, many Upper Creeks did not, and there's a strong tradition of receiving runaway slaves as full members with much intermarriage. In fact, some claim that the Upper Creeks had become a triracial society made up of the intermarried traditional Indians, Africans, and Europeans. It is certain that with the coming of the Civil War, this Klan resisted any alliance with the Confederacy and joined with other traditional Upper Creeks with African ancestry, runaway slaves, and free blacks to fight for the Union. This group fled to Kansas seeking Union protection, where they were attacked by Confederates, some Creeks who were Confederates. Many died along the way and in refugee camps. They compared their experience to a second trail of tears. When they returned to Tulsa, they found their village in ruins. Nevertheless, the Council Oak endured, and they reestablished their town yet again. Brian Hosmer, an American history professor at the University of Tulsa, has some thoughts on this. He's given me permission to share them with you, and I strongly agree with him. Quote, "But is this controversy really about slavery in the Creek Nation? I don't think so. While the Council Oak commemorates a place important to Tulsa and the Creek Nation, it isn't, to my way of thinking, directly implicated in slavery, and certainly not white supremacy. As we know, it is the place where members of the Locapoca Creek town, having immigrated to Indian Territory, reestablished their council ground by lighting a sacred fire. It's where they conducted ceremonies linking their new home with their old, and thus attempting to heal the broken hearts and families. This is a moving story of survival amidst tragedy, as well as a beginning point for our city. Did some Creeks who gathered beneath the Council Oak in 1836 have slaves? We can't discount that possibility, but was the Council Oak about slavery? No. Making it so does violence to historical context. You are commemorating a site that is connected to the school's location, important to our city's history, and a recognition of the people who lived there and had a nation of their own. I strongly urge you to adopt the committee's recommendation.
I just want to say to all the people who came up here and spoke in the opponency, I want you to understand that I heard you and I listened to you. so I hope that you listen to me. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight, and I pray that my words will perhaps help someone come to a new understanding. Whether the Lee stands for Robert E. or something else, that name in this particular context on the school will forever be intertwined with Robert E. America is the land of the free because of the brave. Not only our soldiers, but people who have fought civic battles tooth and nail to secure the futures of those who have been overlooked. America and Tulsa claim to appreciate these people and their legacies. However, this city's continued choice to preserve the namesake of men who stood for the exact opposite paints a very different picture. We claim to want to build self-esteem and self-worth in our kids, but we seem to overlook one crucial fact. Who we glorify matters. Who we honor matters. Whether you believe it or not, when we honor a person, we are making a value judgment and saying that whatever we are honoring them for outshines any negative thing that they may have done in life. We treat their faults like petty vices that can be overlooked in the context of, well, we all have our problems. I'm standing here to tell you that owning another human being like property, treating them as an object rather than a person, and being willing to die over that principle is not a petty vice. For as long as we have been here, African American students have been forced to live in a society where the heinous and egregious acts of historical figures have been downplayed in a manner that effectively makes them unimportant. Put the matter of legacy aside for just a moment. Even if you, for whatever reason, think that naming a place Lee is an honor well deserved, is a school, the home of our kids, really a place to bear the namesake of a man who would have seen a vast number of its students in chains or with a broom in their hands rather than a book? You cannot say that the heinous past, you cannot say that the heinous past is in the past, but want to keep the namesake of a major facilitator of this heinous past on an institution created to mold our society's future. I know that many people will fight for this name simply because of the nostalgia and the historical aspect of the name. However, this choice is once again a function of priorities and values. I respect the concept of having a place that families for generations have come up through. I genuinely do understand that, and I care. But the place itself isn't what's being changed. And regardless of whether the full name is there or not, you and I both know what that name originally meant. And I understand that it means something different to a lot of people. To the majority of people, the name is something beautiful and glorious. But just like most African Americans sitting in a history class, what brings joyous tears to your eyes for one reason brings tears to our eyes for another. You have a choice that lays before you. You can contribute to a culture that is willing to isolate atrocious character traits to the fine print of history for the sake of constructing a glorious mythology, or you can send a message that says there is power in a name and a symbol, and change it to a name that is reflective of the values we want to instill in our future. I don't personally know anyone who is against this measure, but I can say that I love you. You are fellow Tulsans simply fighting for what you think is right. I listened to all of you, and I heard the passion in your voices. While I am for the name being changed, it is not lost on me that it will be difficult for many of you. But understand, this isn't some petty campaign to rip away something that you love for the sake of political correctness. If it were that simple, I would not be willing to stand against your passion. But it's much bigger than that. I'm not here chastising you. I'm here asking you, rethink your position and consider what this name means, not just to you, but to everyone. And then ask if what you gain by keeping the name is worth the message that you're sending. Thank you. I love you all. I want us to come to an understanding, but I need you to come to a different perspective. This is important to all of us, and I want you to know I don't disrespect any of you who came up here who want to keep the name, but I need you to step outside of yourself for a moment and think about what this means to everybody and not just you. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Heather Mulhern. I attended Lee, and I've worked for TPS at Booker T and here at the Service Center, and I have a child about to enter kindergarten at Lee. And it's my understanding that the original objective for renaming Robert E. Lee was to disassociate any association or ties with slavery and the Confederacy. In the last renaming process, we came up with a name equally entrenched in slavery and the Confederacy, Council Oak. And I'd like to read an excerpt from an article written by Ryan P. Smith for the Smithsonian, How Native American Slaveholders Complicate the Trail of Tears Narrative. He talks about the Indians coming and bringing their slaves, and he mentions, obviously, Smith said, the story should be, needs to be, that the enslaved black people and soon-to-be exiled red people would join forces and defeat their oppressor, but such was not the case, far from it. The 5 civilized tribes were deeply committed to slavery, established their own racialized black codes, immediately reestablished slavery when they arrived in Indian territory, rebuilt their nations with slave labor, crushed slave rebellions, and enthusiastically sided with the Confederacy in the Civil War. And in light of the recent coverage in the Tulsa World about the Creek Nation denying the citizenship to the freedmen and their descendants, which, as the Muskogee Phoenix newspaper cites, that it's a violation of the Treaty of 1866, and that the Department of the Creeks in 1979 approved a law in the tribe's constitution that restricts citizenship eligibility to those with proof of Creek lineage. I question the alignment with TPS core values in choosing the name Council Oak. I propose that you honor the first process and keep it Lee. Find another Lee to honor, or come up with a new process and give it the time and due diligence it needs. And I do understand, I'm jumping in here late too, that everyone's weary, but what hasn't happened is a dialogue. And I think it's been mentioned tonight that there's space for great healing to occur, but not until we can have a dialogue. Give it the time. If it needs a year of meetings once a month, let citizens come together. Let them generate some solutions. Really give this an opportunity to move the community forward, and then go to your ad hoc committee and then the board approval. And I appreciate your consideration and time. Thank you.
Mark Sanders.
Good evening, Board and Dr. Gist. If it is not held against me, I'd like to say thank you to Tyrone for having such respect for me and others on our side of the issue. It's that spirit that I really think needs to pervade this debate going forward, so thank you. I have 2 boys who attended Lee. The last one graduated about 4 years ago. I'm going to do something that I really dislike, which is read my remarks, but I want to absolutely make sure that I get them all in, and I don't want to be misunderstood. Before I go any further, it's important to tell you who I am, lest anyone think that I'm anything other than an honest broker in this process. First of all, I'm a 4th generation Tulsan. I was raised on the north and east sides of Tulsa. I'm also a proud product of TPS. I attended Celia Clinton, Audubon Elementary, and Skelly Junior High. I left Tulsa after high school in 1978 and returned on a homing instinct only in 2009. I'm also a mixed race heritage individual. Both the Mexican and Anglo sides of my family lived out the Tulsa race riot in 1921. One side as victims because they were dark-skinned, and the other side, regrettably, as perpetrators. This unique history of ethnic conflict and injury, and my own faith convictions, has led me to spend a fair amount of my life struggling for progressive change in the areas of economic and racial justice. In that effort, I've worked for a number of civil rights organizations and agencies, including the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. In the early years of my own progressive activism, I also had the good fortune to have crossed paths with, befriended, and collaborated with extraordinary civil rights advocates and leaders. Most notably, I was a classmate, friend, and co-activist with Barry Obama as 19 and 20-year-olds at Occidental College. We worked together to fight the school's trustees and administration to divest from companies doing business with the apartheid regime in South Africa. So you may be wondering, given my heritage and history of civil rights advocacy and my kids being gone from Lee, why am I standing here tonight speaking against the ad hoc committee's proposed name change? Why do I even care? Well, it's simple, really. My children's experience with the racially and culturally diverse community of excellence at Lee was simply magical, for me and for them. They were too young then to understand that Tulsa needs reconciliation, but Lee School allowed them to practice it every day. I'd be so bold as to say that that type of experience is one that every child in Tulsa needs and deserves if we are ever going to have a chance of healing our city's deep racial wounds. So I simply refuse to allow that magical community to be destroyed by a fight over the most common surname in the world. If we stay on this path of divisiveness, it will most certainly lead to a decline in school morale, increased student attrition, and a waning of outside support. Future Lee students deserve better. That's why I'm hell-bent on bridge building, bringing folks together on a consensus name that will permit the school to continue to thrive while providing an implicit rebuke of the segregationists, all while pointing inward to the cultural magic happening within those school walls, on the playgrounds and in the classrooms, but also pointing outward to demonstrate what Tulsans of different colors and creeds can accomplish when we work together to reconcile our diverse communities. Building a bridge is the only thing that can save and preserve the magic of this school. So what does a proper bridge look like? Well, it's not just Lee School, which always seemed a bit too cute, sort of like M.B. Brady, and not a name like Council Oak, which calls us to nothing higher and is laden with the same overtones of slavery and the Confederacy as the name Robert E. Lee. No, the bridge must be a name that allows for some continuity while also leaving no doubt about the nature of this school's magic. Such a name is Lee Reconciliation School. And if I could have just one more paragraph of speaking.
I'm sorry, I wanted to gavel everybody out. But we do have your, I don't think we do, these are someone else's. You're welcome to submit your written remarks to the board.
Can I appeal that ruling? I told you up front that
I'm sorry, I gavelled several people off.
going to speak to Tyrone.
I'm going to call the next group of speakers.
That not be held against me, and you're holding it against me.
I'm sorry, I had no clarification around that.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jim Helm. I'm a retired school teacher. That's one of the careers I had. The first job I had out of OSU as a graduate, I was a debate coach and speech teacher at Stillwater High School. And I've heard some excellent speeches tonight, and I've heard some good consideration of opposing points of view. I commend that. Oh, by the way, on our comment sheet, on the rules, I need to talk to your counsel. There's some English errors on it. I taught English, writing, some other things. Once a teacher, always a teacher. Mom was a school teacher before he returned to his dairy farm. My dad was a school teacher before he returned to his dairy farm, and he married Mom. She was a school teacher. Dad's sister was a school teacher. Mom's brothers taught school. You go through my family history, you'll find that James Oliphant Helm left after he came home from the Civil War, taught school. And also, since school teachers weren't paid any better then, superintendent, than they are today, had to farm to make ends meet. His son, James William Helm, my great-grandfather, and I remember him, married the daughter of James Verner, also another Civil War veteran. Only they were not in the same armies. One fought under Ulysses S. Grant. The other one fought, yes, under Robert E. Lee. And Grandpa used to tell me about his grandfathers. He said, they shook hands after the war. And I have a feeling that after all this is settled, that these sides are going to be able to shake hands. Grandpa also did say that a lot of veterans didn't. So there was always work to be done. One of the schools I was proud to serve in was Boynton. Now, if you know a little bit about a Creek history and Muskogee history, that was a community composed largely of the freedmen after the Civil War, one of Oklahoma's virtually all black communities. And I taught in that school before it was consolidated into the Haskell schools. I am thankful for every opportunity to teach, particularly there at Boynton. I'm thankful that I grew up in a school system that integrated long before the Tulsa schools did, the broken arrow school systems. I'm thankful that our farm had neighbors that were of a different race. So to me, getting along with your black neighbors, your Indian neighbors, whatever, that was no big deal. And I'm thankful for that. I'm also have to express my thanks to my Lord that I'm not on the school board. You know, hey, let's give them a hand for putting up with all of us. Win, lose, or draw on your deal. You know, we appreciate your service. Cannot be easy. I did make one commitment to myself tonight. I will never run to be a member of the Tulsa School Board. Yes, I have grandchildren who are in the schools today. But I think you've opened up a can of worms that after this deal, after you name a school, it's not going to be settled. Because then somebody's going to say, hey, what about a school named Roosevelt? Didn't Roosevelt sign Executive Order 9066? Instructions to all persons of Japanese ancestry. Whew. Yeah, okay. So we can't have by our thought process here, we can't have a school named after Roosevelt. Now, I know we don't have a school named after President Clinton, but we do have a Clinton Elementary. So can we not name something after Clinton? Now, what was it Clinton did? Oh, yeah. He smoked marijuana, but he did not inhale, okay? But folks, one of the careers I had, I was a drug and alcohol counselor, so I'm going to tell you this. Even if you didn't inhale, it will affect your memory, because Bill Clinton forgot he was married, you know. We can't even have a school named Wilson. Wilson is the president who segregated the federal workforce. Or can we? Can we teach history as history really happened, about the good, the bad, and the ugly? Just tell the truth.
Our next 5 speakers: Julie Skye, Nehemiah Frank, Kate Starr, and Kevin Gustafson, and Richard Baxter.
Hi, I'm Julie Skye. This year's Time Person of the Year may very well be Me Too. Maybe only in the top 5, but it brought home to us the reality that there are some people that don't understand what Me Too means. There are some people that know too much what Me Too means, and there are people who are friends or loved ones of Me Too victims. This is a learning opportunity for us to see Me Too around a different issue. I don't know how we could vote tonight and pull together the factions that are in this room and have everyone working together for the same good that this great school has brought. We have to use this as a learning moment about how we bridge this gap and how those with privilege who don't understand what those who have suffered have gone through. This has to be a chance for us to model to other schools and other communities how to bridge the gap when there are those that are suffering and those that can't understand or feel it.
Good evening. Sometimes you have to get in the way to get in good trouble. Necessary trouble to make a way out of no way is the initial phrase that astonishingly caught my eyes upon opening a journal, an unexpected gift I received from a close friend. Congressman John Lewis, a high-minded and principled man, thoughtfully uttered this expression, words worthy of such recognition. The author strategically placed Lewis's quote on page 1, just for me to find. The congressman's wisdom reassured that I made the right decision, despite the floating opinions of others. In this life, a controversial leader, race baiter, and professional agitator are the adjectives and nouns that my skeptics have shallowly crowned upon my head. Bearing their ornamented headdress critiques proudly and unapologetically, I have come to the understanding that amid courage and controversy dwells a magical space where transformation actually occurs. The brave souls who are willing to walk into the fiery furnace are history's movers and shakers. Such individuals redefine the social landscape to such a degree the kinetic outcomes are immeasurable. Trudging in the tracks of transformative titans wasn't the foreseeable outcome I intended. Somehow and unknowingly along my life's walk, tracing their footsteps and walking in their path materializes as abstract pointers leading the way to the mountaintop. I have yet to arrive at God's planned acme for my life. Cowardly decisions not only impeded my own progress, but the positive advancements in the society to which I am a citizen, meaning I bear the shared responsibility of improving it. From the moment it was self-revealed, we all share the collective responsibility of society's amelioration is the day I allowed my conscience to guide me into the fiery flames that refine. Choosing to move out of my comfort, visualizing the bigger picture for a future yet to arrive, I stepped into a place of vulnerable emotion and unfamiliar territory. I placed 5 elected officials' faces on a Confederate flag. It would be the boldest card I ever played in my life. My only regret is the dreadful experience for the individuals who had to endure the uncomfortable social repercussions of my public criticism. Before making that bold decision, I asked the Creator if this was the way forward and was unable to hear anything physically back but the pounding and thumping of my heart, beating like an African drum, seemingly telling me to select and press publish. I prayed and begged God to protect them. I closed my eyes and I saw the bigger picture, and so I clicked published. It was the worst decision. It was the best decision. We were uncomfortable, yet we are all liberated. The elephant has left the building, and now we can sip English tea and nibble on West African fufu. Importantly, we are creating historical moments because we are choosing to have difficult conversations. We are reconciling because we are conciliating. Through this process, I've had several conversations with individuals on both sides of this debate. I even entertained the idea of a Lee Reconciliation School. However, I thought about this Midtown School was named 100 years ago. I thought about the fact that 100 years ago, the Confederate veterans held a convention here in Tulsa to commemorate the Confederacy, and in doing so, they dedicated the school in Maple Ridge, Robert E. Lee. Tate Brady was one of the sponsors and more prominent advocates for this endeavor. He revered General Lee to such high esteem that he even fashioned his house in Brady Heights as a replica of Lee's Virginia home. Tate Brady was a member of the KKK and one of the architects of the 1921 Tulsa Massacre, commonly known as the Tulsa Race Riot. After much research and much thought, I cannot support any name that bears the perpetrator of humanity's surname. Furthermore, after pondering over my own family's historical encounters with the KKK, KKK, finding that my grandparents purchased and my mother and I lived in the once family home of David Duke brought me to the conclusion that racism pervades within the very DNA of this city. This cynical and shameful facet of white supremacy is mostly wealthy, stubborn, and insidious, camouflaging itself as a friend of Tulsa, all while simultaneously squeezing the life and possibility out of it. In the home that once belonged to the former Grand Wizard of the KKK, running through its corridors as a child, I clumsily tripped over a hallway rug and fell onto a furnace. Today, 30 years later, I still bear the scar. As painful as it was, the scar is a reminder of my joyful childhood there. For that, I support the preservation of the historical monuments of the building, but not the current name nor surname of the school. I fully support the ad hoc committee's recommendation for Council Oaks. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Starr, and for the past 15 years I've actively worked as a white ally to dismantle systems of oppression for marginalized people. Currently at the Tulsa Area United Way, and before that at All Souls Unitarian Church. My mother was a Navy brat who taught me that it takes exposure and education to become culturally aware. My husband, a graduate and the self-identified king of Robert E. Lee School in and I passed on her legacy, strategically immersing our daughter in different cultures and educational demographics from Zero Elementary and Carver Middle School to Booker T. Washington and Holland Hall. I'm a lifelong member of the community and longtime friends with people who are passionate on both sides of this issue. And I'm here to encourage the board to support the name Council Oak over Lee Elementary. I understand the emotional attachment some parents and alumni have to the name Lee and the grief it will cause to let it go. However, I believe this pain has a payoff similar to leaving our childhood home for the next phase in our growth and development. It's not the same as the chronic suffering and psychic wound inflicted by a constant reminder of the Confederacy, a symbol of slavery and systemic oppression. Tulsa is at an important juncture in our history, and many of us are striving to evolve beyond some of the beliefs and values passed down from the dominant culture. We want our beloved city to become more aware, understanding, accepting, compassionate, and inclusive, a gathering place where equity is enjoyed by everyone, regardless of race, socioeconomics, religion, sexual preference, age, or ability. I believe the name Council Oak symbolizes this effort, as it was a historic site where the Muskogee Creek first planned how they would live in harmony with the early settlers and other tribes also displaced from their homelands. Council Oak is a place with deep historic roots that continues to sprout new growth for future generations, just like the school. Council Oak is strong and resilient, like the Native American people and the children we all hope to raise. Even if we were to remove Robert E. from the name Lee, the message we would be sending our historically marginalized neighbors is that the dominant culture is unwilling to listen to different perspectives, learn from our mistakes, and change our behavior as a result. When I do inclusion work for businesses, we tell employees they don't necessarily have to change their beliefs, but they do have to modify their behaviors to show respect for everyone. As we near the anniversary of the 1921 race massacre, Tulsans will look to this decision as another symbol of reconciliation for our African American and Native American neighbors and friends. Removing the Confederate symbol and name will be a sign of respect, a demonstration of strength and solidarity in the face of adversity, and a reconciliation, not a revision of history. It will show our children that it is never too late to change our minds, say we're sorry, and what can we do to make things right. That's the kind of history lesson I want my child to learn.
Hello, I'm Kevin Gustafson. I'm a parent in support of this initiative. Robert E. Lee is one of my ancestors. We can argue about his character, but selecting the name of Lee for the school and other monuments during the height of the Jim Crow era was intentional. The name is now associated with racism, and it's a strong symbol of the alt-right. And Lee himself did not want this. He did not want his image after the Civil War to symbolize anything. I like the name Lee. You know, when this first came up, you know, I felt a little sadness, you know, about the, you know, because I felt that it shouldn't be named after Robert E. Lee, and I guess initially I thought maybe a new Lee name might be okay, and I'll get back to that later. I had a bumper sticker, just says L-E-E, Lee, on the back, and I was proud of our school. And I was coming off the highway in my neighborhood one day last fall when some kids pulled up beside me in their SUV, and so I rolled down my window, and they said, "Oh, your bumper sticker is racist," and, you know, implying that I was too. And I said, "Oh, yes. Well, I agree that, you know, this school shouldn't be named after Robert E. Lee. I have this on the back because I'm proud of the school, and I really hope that, you know, something changes and I can put a new sticker on the back of my car and still be proud of the school." But, you know, when the process that took place in the beginning went through and the name was renamed Lee School, I went and I took the sticker off my car, because at that point we had a chance to make a new choice and we failed to separate ourselves from our racist past. So I was ashamed of that sticker. And now I have a leopard. So when we were given the chance for a new start, why would we choose the same name? You know, if our community is so welcoming and open and non-racist, why would we choose the same name? With the chance over to, you know, why would we pick a new Lee? You know, we just want to throw up any old name. We heard them say, just throw up a name, it's easy. You know, why just throw up a name? This is our school. You know, why do we want just any old person? And I have to say, so, you know, and especially why pick another Lee name when it's hurtful to other people, because we're holding on to that name Lee from the past. So I have to say also, I served on the second ad hoc committee, and there are several things I want to say about that. But, you know, one is that, you know, we did consider Lee names. There were a bunch of Lee names in the pot. And, you know, because we were going for names that was symbolized our school, you know, I just have to say that, you know, none of the other Lees came to the top. You know, they were there, we considered them. They just didn't rise to the top, because for other reasons, we found other compelling names to consider. And that was, you know, based on lots of input. So the other thing is, I want to say a few things. We spent time in that committee considering our own biases. We considered other viewpoints of other people in the room, and how this decision was bigger than us. And our decisions changed from the beginning to the end. People had the first name that they came in, they thought that they wanted, and it changed through the end. Partly because we realized this was bigger than us, and that we needed to pick a name that was good for the whole community as a whole. So I think that the sign of the success of this was that there were a number of people that were on the first committee that ended up on the second committee, and they came up with a totally different choices. So they were changed by the process. We spent a lot of time thinking about what we were doing. So I wasn't in the first committee, so I don't know what went on, but I know the second committee was very a good process. We considered we did not consider this to be a popularity contest. We considered the positive and negative aspects of all names. And so, really, in thinking about the negative as well as the positive, that's where, that's how we continue to pull forward and come up with the choices. And I want to also correct a couple of things. The facilitator at the beginning said that Lee School was not likely to pass, not that we shouldn't consider it. Dr. Giss came to the first meeting, and she specifically said we could do whatever we want. We could recommend whatever we want to the board. But some of us had the understanding that it was not a likely choice or a good idea to put Lee name in front of the board. And that's all I want to say. So, thank you very much. And I support the name Council Oak as well. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to talk about it.
Do I press this? Oh, it's on. My name is Baxter, Richard Zabon Baxter. I'm the founder of nonprofit organization Racism Stinks. How y'all doing? I heard a lot tonight. I heard a lot about the Lee Jeans, Council Oak process. We all can agree Lee is a great school, right? I don't think everybody agrees. Can we all agree Lee is a great school? Okay. We're getting somewhere. Side note, I have all the answers. Okay, so we all agree Lee is a great school. There's been a lot, like I said, that's been said this evening. But one thing that I want to really stress is Lee is about education. There's the education board here. And we have to learn from our past. Changing the name to, I don't know if Council Oak is the name to change it to or not, but changing the name and keeping the name Lee, we already been through that, a historic name change in the city of Tulsa. Does anybody know what I'm referring to? Brady. People are still referring to it as Brady. Did you hear? I didn't say it. So I want you guys to imagine, imagine that there was a great school, such like Lee, except twice the love, twice the commitment, twice everything. And they have a motto, all dedicated on loving families. That sound good? Nobody likes it? I don't think they like it. All dedicated on loving families. Does that sound good? I'm glad somebody said no. There you go. Adolf, right? If we changed it to Adolf Anderson, the famous chess player who nobody knows about, what are you going to really think about still when you hear that? Which Adolf are you going to think about? A lot of people here spoke tonight. Great perspectives. Like my friend Tyrant said, you know, we have to respect everybody's values and everybody's opinions, you know. And maybe if we already didn't go through that situation with the Brady situation, changing the name, or not even changing it, but altering it to Lee from, you know, Robert E. Lee would have been acceptable. But it's an insult to educators and education, and we're supposed to learn. It's an insult to our intelligence. And educators are supposed to cultivate our intelligence. And to insult our intelligence at the same time in an effort to cultivate our intelligence, it doesn't add up. So I just came here to speak about, you know, if you're gonna change the name, change the name. If not, keep it exactly the same. Don't insult our intelligence. Thank you. And let's thank Bethany Rose for giving me a chance.
I want to thank all of our speakers tonight for being here and the great conversation and perspectives that we're having throughout this. We heard some things about process tonight. I want to remind everyone that previously in the spring we talked about improvements. Right now we have a process that's really created for a new name when we get a new building or something like that, and we don't have really a renaming process. And so we have made some recommendations earlier in the spring, and we expect those to be coming forth in the form of policy soon. So there's a lot of listening, a lot of conversations about that, and input and more here tonight. So we appreciate that. And from that, I think we can move on to the rest of our agenda.
Thank you, Madam President. Items G2 through G6 will be presented by our Chief of Schools, Dr. Eric Green. Dr. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, Madam President, members of the board. Item G2 enters into an agreement with Franklin Covey Client Sales Incorporated out of Salt Lake City, Utah, to purchase the Leader in Me coaching system for use at Hoover Elementary School during the 2018-2019 school year. Leader in Me is a school-wide model structured to increase teacher effectiveness, student engagement, and academic achievement while preparing students to be leaders. The cost is not to exceed $6,150, and that's to be taken from the school's Title I budget. Item G3.
Dr. Green, can I interrupt you for a minute?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Huff Hines had signed up to speak on G2, and I think he has about 3 minutes, 30 seconds around there left of his time, so let him speak to that. And Mr. Huff Hines, if you don't mind, to go ahead and speak to G3 and G4 as well.
Lake City, Utah, thank you, to purchase the Leader in Me coaching system for use at Hoover Elementary School during the 2018-2019 school year. This excellent school is named after a fine leader, President Hoover, who, according to crosswalk.com, said, "We must seek revival of our strength in the spiritual foundations which are bedrock of our community, of our republic. Democracy is the outgrowth of the religious conviction of the sacredness of every human life. On the religious side, its highest embodiment is the Bible. On the political side, the Constitution." End of quote. May we say yes to this Leader in Us proposal. In G3 recommendation, renew the agreement with Zern Inc., a New York, to provide online instructional software to students at MacArthur Elementary School during the 2018-2019 school year. I'm supporting this idea. And MacArthur Elementary School, their vision, excellence, and high expectations with a commitment to all. And the following quote is attributed to the great man this excellent school is named after. "Believe me, sir, never a night goes by, be I ever so tired, but I read the Word of God before I go to bed." And G4, recommendation, enter into a contract with Camp Wallahili, Soto, Oklahoma, as the venue for the annual Edison Senior Retreat 2018. It's reported of Thomas Edison that Thomas Edison said, "My mother was the making of me." Nancy Matthew Elliott, the mother of Thomas, was a devout Presbyterian, a lover of God, His Word, the Bible, and our Lord Jesus Christ. I'm grateful for the influence she had on the life of this man this excellent school was named after. The senior retreat seems to be a fine idea, promoting harmony, unity, and fun. Easy to support. Thank you, Madam President, for your excellent leadership.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chief. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Item G3 is a renewal of the agreement with Zern Incorporated from New York, to provide online instructional software to students at MacArthur Elementary School during the 2018-2019 school year. The software will be used to differentiate, remediate, and challenge students as an individualized component of the math curriculum being used in the classroom. The cost is not to exceed $2,500, and it too will be taken from the school's Title I budget. Item G4 is to enter into a contract with Camp Wallahili, Soto, Oklahoma, as the venue for the annual Edison Senior Retreat, September 29th through October 1st of 2018. The cost is not to exceed $2,500, and that's to be taken from Edison School Activity Fund. Item G5 is to enter into a license agreement with Uncommon Schools out of New York, to purchase sets of plug-and-play materials for Burroughs Elementary School for the 2018-2019 school year. Plug-and-plays are ready-to-use modules designed to improve teaching practices and supporting in their professional development around Teach Like a Champion teaching techniques. This cost is not to exceed $1,500, and that would be taken from the school improvement funds. That concludes.
Thank you, Dr. Green.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions?
I'm sorry, I did miss one. And item G6 is a routine item for select schools, booster clubs to sell stadium food and beverage concessions during the 2018-2019 school year. And there's no cost to the district for that.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Items G7 through G9 will be presented by our Chief Talent and Learning Officer, Devin Fletcher. Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, Madam President, members of the board. Item G7 and G8 are both for request for proposal. Item G7 will provide coaching support around research and evidence-based classroom instructional strategies that support improvements in academic achievement. The cost for this is not to exceed $900,000. It will be from individual Title I site budgets, and schools that are a part of this have opted in and selected to be a part of it. Item G8 is from our Striving's Readers Grant, which serves students in the pre-K through 12th grade feeder pattern at Skelly Early Childhood Center, Skelly Elementary School, Owen Elementary School, Jones, Hell's Junior High, and Hell High School. The Striving Readers Initiative will serve approximately 3,500 students and 250 teachers with high-quality needs-based services, instructional training, and a particular focus on English language learners, given the feeder pattern there, and will provide resources and materials that supplement and advance the work that's happening in our district's literacy plan. The cost for this is not to exceed $600,000. It's from the Striving Readers Grant. We were awarded the grant in April, if you all remember, of 2018, and in total the grant is $1.4 million, so pretty significant. Item G9 is a recommendation, a routine item for creates and deletes within our communications, Indian education, data strategy and analytics, and teaching and learning and talent management departments. And on that one, I'm happy to respond to any questions.
On item G8, remind us who provided the Striving Readers Grant.
It's a partnership through the Oklahoma State Department of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Are there questions?
Oh, just on G7, could you clarify for us how these services are different than what other vendors are providing for the district? And is it possible the request for proposal would be just an expansion of services from one of our current vendors, or are we looking for a completely new vendor to provide these services?
The request for proposal will source from a variety of vendors that meet the kind of the definition of what has been asked, and once it's out currently, once it's closed, a committee of school leaders, teachers, central staff will work on selecting to ensure which one is most closely aligned. We do have services that through partners that currently provide coaching and supports. It could be an expansion of those. However, we don't know until it's concluded. We won't know until it's concluded.
And the uniqueness is the culture focus?
Culture focus, specifically.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher, President Schreiber, and Board Member Shelton. Moving on to items G10 and 11, and we'll have those presented by our Chief Information and Analytics Officer, Stephen Fedor. Mr. Fedor.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, President Schreiber, members of the board. Item G10 is an amendment to a contract with Tyler Technologies for Munis, which is our primary payroll and talent management data system. The reason for the change is a specific software that is going to be required within that system. It's a change on their end, and we do need to amend the contract in order to use that new software. Item G11 is to enter into a one-year agreement with the President and Fellows of Harvard College in Cambridge, Massachusetts, for the purpose of having one district employee participate in the Strategic Data Project at the Center for Education Policy Research at Harvard. By participating, this individual, along with other individuals at the district, will have the opportunity to get extensive support and continued commitment to using high-quality research methods and data analysis to bear on strategic management and policy decisions. By participating in the SDP, the district's data fellow will receive extensive in-person and remote professional development and guidance in district-centered data projects. All of the travel and any other costs are included in the cost, which is not to exceed $59,000. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Fedor. Moving on, item G12 recommends purchasing services from CAP Tulsa for eligible students at the Skelly Early Childhood Center who will participate in the Striving Readers program during the 2018-2019 school year. As was discussed a moment ago, we received the Striving Readers grant for this school year through the 21-22 school year. And we'll partner with the Community Action Project, or CAP Tulsa, to serve students in the pre-K through 12 Hale feeder pattern. This includes the Skelly Early Childhood Education Center, as well as Skelly, Owen, and Jones Elementary Schools, Hale Junior High School, and Hale High School. And the project is expected to serve approximately 3,500 students. The program will consist of 250 teachers with high-quality, needs-based consulting services, instructional training and resources and materials that supplement, complement, and advance the district's literacy plan. So we can certainly answer any additional questions that board members might have about this part of the work, and Mr. Fletcher would be happy to do that if you have any. So moving on, items G13 through G18 will be presented by Executive Director of Bond Projects, Chris Hudgens. Mr. Hudgens.
Thank you, Superintendent Guest, President, Board President, and board members. Items G13, 14, and 15 are to enter in contract with a 4-classroom addition at Grissom Elementary. This is also going to include a safe room for the entire school. This is going to be, with the completion of this will be our 16th safe room. Currently, this fall we'll be completing our 13th. So the construction manager on the project is Crossland Construction, and this contracts will be awarded. This is in the bidding stage, and we'll be bringing these back in the next board meeting for the consent. Items G16, G17, and G18 include awarding the contracts for the secure entries at Hamilton, Burroughs, Robertson, and Penn. These are increased to the current contracts to complete those projects, and these projects will be encumbered with Trigon construction, and the amount total increase is $147,958. Are there any questions on any of those?
Thank you, Mr. Hudgens. Item G19 is a routine in nature item, and this is recommending some clarifying language and adding some statutory language to School Board Policy 1102. And this is regarding vacancies and appointment of vacancies and making sure that's consistent with state law. And our General Counsel, Jana Burke, is available to answer any questions board members might have about this item. And that concludes our information items tonight, Madam President.
Any staff reports this evening, Dr. Guest?
We do have a staff report, but I promise it will be quick. It's important and necessary that we do this tonight because it is required that we do this tonight. So our Chief of Schools, Dr. Eric Green, is going to present a very brief overview of some very minor adjustments to the behavior response plan for this year.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, President Schreiber, and members of the board. Dr. Oliver Wallace, Director of Student and Family Advocacy, recently presented the 2018-2019 Behavior Response Plan to the Policy Committee of the board. for which I'm pleased to share that there are no substantive changes for this year. Basically reviewed some language for clarity and updated calendars and even contact information in the plan that's shared with families and members of the school communities. As you'll recall, each year, Dr. Wallace and his review committee take the time to review the document to identify areas of possible improvement and suggest any revisions to the document for the board's review. While there are some issues that the committee has asked us to address in the document over time, we want to take more time to understand those issues, to consider possible changes to the language, and to support schools and community members in making those changes most effectively. Again, I want to state very clearly that for the 2018-2019 school year, there will be no substantive changes to the behavior response plan. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Board member reports and concerns. Miss Fate.
You forgot my name.
I was about to call you by first name.
Just want to remind those board members, if you have not registered yet for the OSSBA meeting toward the end of the month, this Friday the cost goes up. So be sure and get your information to Ms. Hutchins.
Ms. Shelton.
Yes, I had expressed at the first meeting in July, that I would be turning in my letter of resignation at the end of this board meeting this evening. In the time since then, the decision was made to put the consideration of the recommendation of Council Oak on as information tonight to not be voted on this evening, which I am grateful for. I think that's appropriate for us to hear from the community and consider that feedback we received. And so I will be waiting until the next board meeting until we consider that and vote that evening. That the consideration of names of our schools has been a significant part of my time on the board, and want to make sure that I see that through. And so I'll be here for at least one more board meeting, granted that we vote next time.
Any other board member reports or concerns? We have no citizens' comments this evening. Dr. Giss, you have a report?
I don't have a report. I do just want to say how grateful I am to be a Tulsan and to be a part of the Tulsa Public Schools family, and to be a part of a community that can have such a dynamic and passionate, but also respectful and productive conversation like the ones that we have had, including tonight. So I'm just grateful for that, and I appreciate the leadership of the board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gist. We have no non-routine items to discuss this evening. Mr. Wade, is there any new business? The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Monday, August 20th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. in the Cheryl Selman Room at the Education Service Center, 3027 South New Haven Avenue, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
I'll call for the vote. Ms. Shelton?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.